Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. Websites like ogrish.com and rotten.com had a profound impact on internet culture, influencing not only the way content is shared and consumed online, but also shaping broader discussions about media, censorship, and the ethics of content distribution. These sites were some of the earliest examples of shock sites, which hosted graphic and explicit content intended to provoke strong reactions. Ogrish and rotten.com played a crucial role in normalizing the consumption of extreme content on the internet. Before these sites, exposure to graphic violence, death, and other macabre subjects were largely confined to news media, horror films, or medical and forensic contexts. These shock sites brought such content into the mainstream of internet culture, where it became a form of entertainment or curiosity for a niche audience. This normalization contributed to the desensitization effect, where users became increasingly numb to the shock value of such content. Though shock sites in 2024 are more or less a relic of the internet's past, with a couple of exceptions, such as for ync.com, that unfortunately hasn't stopped the proliferation of gruesome online content. Social media sites, such as Facebook and YouTube in the early days, were also plagued by the problem of online gore, with videos from terrorist groups, as well as drug cartels flooding such sites. Online gore was more of a topic of discussion in the early internet years, but collectively, public consciousness has almost shifted to accept it to be a part of the online experience in recent times. In 2024, X, formerly known as Twitter, is flooded with imagery and videos from combat zones, drug cartels, as well as random acts of violence. While the debate is still open in regards to the sharing of such content, it still remains a big part of online culture. Ultimately, wherever you sit on the ethical debate surrounding such videos being available, they are here to stay, whether we like it or not. Today, we will continue our series exploring what I believe to be the worst videos that fit into this macabre genre. But nevertheless, let's get into the topic at hand. Number 1. The Moroccan Backpackers beheadings. During the early morning hours of the 17th of December 2018 in Morocco, at the foothills of Mount Toubkal near the village of Emil, 2 French hitchhikers made the grisly discovery of 2 decapitated female bodies. Police were swiftly notified of the scene, and an investigation quickly followed. Due to the sheer carelessness of one of the perpetrators, men connected with the murders were quickly apprehended. In total, 24 men were arrested in connection with the killings. The case, as well as the grisly video, became a political hot topic, as well as spawning various religious debates. Numerous online content creators, including those with a political slant, covered the case. The murders shocked the world due to their utter barbarism, and Morocco would quickly act, making sure to dish out the harshest punishments possible. Ultimately, one of Morocco's main income generators is tourism, so they had to be seen to act and portray that they took the safety of visitors seriously. A suspect named Abderrahim Kahili was quickly apprehended following the incident after police found an ID in the victim's tent that had been left behind by the suspect. 3 additional suspects, Abdesamad Ajoud, Rashid Afati, and Younes Waziad, were later apprehended by police while riding a bus during the morning rush hours in the nearby city of Marrakesh. The 3 suspects were caught in possession of bladed weapons. Abdesamad Ajoud is assumed to be the leader of the group, and the 4 men had shot a video the week before the murders where they pledged their allegiance to ISIS. The killers had agreed to carry out a terrorist act on either security services or foreign tourists, before deciding to travel to the Emil region to look for foreigners, and this would be where they would target the 2 backpackers. The murderers also filmed the killings, and uploaded the video online shortly after the murder. Moroccan police later made additional arrests of individuals believed to have connections with the suspects. In total, 24 went on trial in Saleh, near Rabat in Morocco. Of those charged, 23 suspects were Moroccans from Marrakesh, and 1 was a Swiss-Spanish Muslim convert. 3 of them were charged with murder, and the other 23 of various terrorist charges. In May of 2019, one of the suspects admitted to killing one of the women. He had been previously jailed for having attempted to join the Islamic State in Syria, but was released in 2015. In July of 2019, the 3 main culprits were all given a death sentence. They did appeal these sentences, however, these appeals were quickly rejected. It is worth noting, while the death penalty is still in effect in Morocco, an execution hasn't been carried out since 1993. On the 28th of February 2023, Abderrahim Khayali deleted himself in his prison cell. The others are still currently awaiting their executions. The poor victims in this tragic case were a 24-year-old Danish woman, Louise Jespersen, and a 28-year-old Norwegian woman, Maureen Uland. The pair were students at the University of Southeastern Norway, where they studied outdoor recreation and nature guidance to become tour guides. They quickly became friends, bonding over their shared interests of travelling, tourism and sports. The pair had arrived in Morocco on the 9th of December as tourists, with the intention of trekking and chasing experiences, according to Jespersen's mother. The 2 women first arrived in the city of Marrakesh before travelling to the MacLeod region in the Atlas Mountains. Little did the pair know, their eventual murderers were already in the area, searching for victims. They spent 4 days in the area, walking the trails looking for the perfect victims, though the groups they encountered were either too big or they were accompanied by a local guide. However, they then spotted Louisa and Maureen in the area. They chose the women as their victims as they were not with a guide and were sufficiently isolated from civilization. The group, led by Abdelsamad Ajoud, spotted the girls' tent in the wilderness, and they then carried out their horrific act of barbarism. According to reports, Abdelsamad Ajoud carried out the murder on the video, while Rashid Afati was the one who filmed the gruesome act. The video is hard to watch, and I'd implore you not to search for it. Many claim it to be the worst beheading video on the internet. The clip itself is short at only 1 minute and 16 seconds in length. However, that doesn't make it any easier to watch. As you play the video, you are met with the sights of a POV style shot of one of the murderers turning on the camera, and he is holding what appears to be a flashlight to illuminate the area. What you see is horrific. The men prior to recording have seemingly dragged one of the poor women out of her tent so that she is outside. The woman is laying on her stomach and there is already some blood. A man can be seen holding a razor-sharp machete and he cuts the poor girl on the back of her neck, slicing back and forth. This causes the victim to let out a brief but harrowing scream. It echoes through the night sky. She screams "ow" as the blade cuts back and forth at the back of her neck. She continues to scream, and instinctively she turns over to stop the cutting on the back of her neck. The person filming then places the boot over the victim's face to subdue the screams, as well as to hold the victim's head in place, preventing her from moving. The machete-wielding killer then takes the opportunity to then slice through the poor woman's throat. The blade cuts incredibly quickly, and in the space of a few seconds, it has cut completely through the windpipe. There are no longer any more horrific screams. Instead, all you hear is the killers talking and the horrible sounds of laboured breathing. The breathing sounds like hissing. Once the windpipe has been cut, the killer then uses the machete to cut through the spinal cord. He hacks away, and in only a few hits, he completely beheads the woman. The camera angle changes, and at this point, you see that the victim is just outside the tent. The killer briefly picks up the head before dropping it next to the bloody corpse. The person filming then moves away from the scene, and he moves around the tent to its opening. You then see another man reach into the tent and then pull out another severed head, before it drops on the ground outside the tent. The video ends as the killers start to walk away from the scene. The victim who was killed on the video I believe was Maureen Uland, though I could be wrong. During the video, one of the killers can be heard saying, "Revenge for our brothers in Hajin," referring to the December 2018 Battle of Hajin in Syria. Frankly, the clip itself is utterly depressing. The context, the screams, and the graphic nature of the video makes it incredibly hard to watch. Number 2. The Russian lathe incident. For those of you out there living in the UK or maybe even the USA, and if you've ever had to work manual labour, I'm sure at times you've been frustrated with perceived over-the-top health and safety regulations getting in the way of your job. Having grown up working on various building sites, I can certainly attest to this. Though, despite them making our jobs longer, cases like this make you realise that said regulations are indeed very important. This entrance on this list is certainly one of the most recognisable Gore videos online, and it's also one of the most well-known accident videos on the internet. It's up there with the likes of the infamous diving faceplit video. The video emerges from the Tatarstan region of Russia, commonly known as Tataria. The clip emerged during November of 2020, and it subsequently went viral due to its graphic and unique nature. Despite the shocking nature of the clip, and despite it going viral, there has been next to no information on the victim or the circumstances surrounding the tragic accident. All that I managed to attain online is that the victim of the accident was a 56-year-old man named Murat, and his second name to my knowledge has not been published. The accident was covered by local news networks in the region, and during TV interviews, a neighbour of Murat described him as a fine man who was always friendly. Murat was divorced but had 2 children with his ex-wife, a son and a daughter. The son was still living with Murat at the time of his death. Murat worked in a warehouse for a construction company called the Izir Company, and he primarily worked with metal. Following his death, investigations by Russian authorities found that Murat at the time of his death wasn't wearing the relevant safety clothing prior to using the machine, and this has been stated as the reason for the accident. The gruesome incident produced a 1-minute 29-second video which details the accident, and there are also at least 7 lesser-known aftermath images, all of which are incredibly graphic. The images are hard to explain, but essentially they show body parts strewn all over the warehouse. One image seems to show the victim's femur bone, which has been stripped of all its flesh. Another image also shows what looks to be the victim's lower set of teeth, and another seems to show his crushed skull, which has been completely hollowed out. The images are actually far more graphic than the actual video, due to the poor quality of the footage. In regards to the clip itself, it's rather self-explanatory, albeit brutal. The video is taken from warehouse surveillance footage, and it's a little grainy. It also appears to have been recorded by a secondary device, meaning the footage was playing on a monitor, and the footage was then recorded by a mobile device. A man can be heard talking and reacting to the video as he watches it. As you play the clip, you see Murat fiddling around with a machine, and he doesn't seem to be wearing the appropriate clothing. He's wearing what looks to be a loose-fitted jumper. He spends the first 30 seconds or so of the video essentially turning the machine on, which he does. You see the machine pole rotate, and at this point Murat walks away from the machine, seemingly to grab something away from the machine, possibly a tool. He then reapproaches the now rotating lathe machine. He then seemingly reaches over the lathe, which is in operation. In a split second, his sleeve then gets caught on the rotating pole, and his arm gets stuck in the machine. For a few seconds, Murat is immobilized, as his hand and arm is completely stuck. But at this point, it appears there is hope that Murat can be saved. However, none of his colleagues are in shot, so no one is there to turn off the machine before it does more damage. Before anybody can help, suddenly, the man is then sucked into the machine, and essentially, his entire body is rotating around the pole extremely quickly. As his limbs hit the edges of the machine, you see chunks of flesh fly off into the warehouse. As the machine continues to spin, it actually gets faster and faster as more and more body parts and chunks of flesh fly off Murat's body, presumably as the weight is getting less and less. The man's limbs are eventually severed, and at this point, the machine just pumps out mists of blood, which stain the surrounding areas. Suddenly, more chunks of flesh, bone, and innards once again fly out of a machine. It's the rest of Murat's body, his torso, etc. It's complete and utter carnage. The video ends as one of his colleagues finally turns the machine off, but he realises it's too late, and the colleague's body language conveys the utter sense of shock that he is experiencing. In one of the latter mentioned aftermath images, you actually see either an organ or a chunk of flesh literally hanging off a piece of sheet metal, and it's hanging by a single strand of flesh. I don't even know what it is. It could just be a chunk of flesh, it could be an organ, or it could even be part of a sternum. Sadly, the clip in recent years has been used by edgelords to shock unsuspecting viewers on apps such as TikTok. The video is brutal in every regard, but ultimately, it's a warning to those working in dangerous professions. A split-second lapse in concentration can lead to your grisly demise. The clip also raises questions on whether there is any moral argument for such footage to exist. Of course, some will view it purely for shock value, though on the flip side, it can certainly be used to hammer home the point of ensuring safe working environments. Number 3. Brazilian Bloodfall. Much like Mexico, Brazil also suffered with the infestation of extremely violent criminal gangs, most of whom primarily work within the illicit drug trade, but as is the case with Mexico, gangs in Brazil have gone on to stick their fingers in other avenues, including kidnap, extortion, robbery, murder for hire, and illegal prostitution. Sadly, the criminal gangs in Brazil do not keep the violence contained to the criminal underworld. In fact, they very often victimize the local neighborhoods in which they operate. Much like with the cartels in Mexico, Brazilian gangs have also caught on to the tactic of weaponized hyperviolence. Public displays of violence is common in gang-infested areas, as is the filming of gruesome murders of rival gang members. All of this, of course, is to spread fear among those who dare go against them. The most notable criminal gangs in Brazil would be Primeiro Comando da Capital, Comando Vermelho, as well as Família do Norte. All of these gangs have flooded the internet with extremely graphic imagery and videos. However, despite the depravity of these gangs and the videos that they have produced over the years, they don't for whatever reason garner the same type of attention as their counterparts in Mexico do. This video is up there in my opinion with the worst videos from the country of Brazil. Many have dubbed the video with the title The Human Faucet or title similar, and having watched the video, I can see why. The clip itself is 1 minute and 50 seconds in length, and it has been recorded in a jungle-type location during nighttime hours. As you play the clip, you are met with the sight of a victim whose hands have been tied together with rope, and his mouth has been gagged with a cloth. He's also been placed in a freshly dug shallow grave. Standing in front of the victim is a hitman who is ominously carrying a rusty old pickaxe. For a few seconds the camera focuses on the victim's face, and his face portrays the sheer terror in which he must have felt at that moment. His eyes are watering, he looks on the verge of tears, and he can barely even dare to look up at his soon-to-be murderers. He's completely resigned to his fate. The hitmen can be heard talking amongst themselves, possibly discussing what they are about to do to the helpless man. They are also talking to somebody on radio, possibly a high-ranking faction commander. The camera continues to focus on the victim's face, before the killer with the pickaxe then points the pickaxe blade's tip centimeters away from the victim's face. Instinctively, the victim closes his eyes. He realizes his time is up. Suddenly, the pickaxe-wielding hitman swings it back and then attempts to plunge it into the victim's face. However, he misses and actually hits the forehead. It doesn't penetrate, it literally bounces off a skull, which causes a huge laceration, and the wound begins to swell instantly. The first blow causes the victim to open his eyes, but he doesn't scream. The killer once again swings the pickaxe back, before then once again swinging it at the victim. This time, the tip of the pickaxe penetrates into the victim's left eye. With the blade plunged into the eye socket, the killer then wrestles it free before taking another swing. Once again, the pickaxe skims off the skull, but this time it partially rips a chunk of flesh off the right side of the victim's forehead. He then swings the pickaxe again. This time, he hits the left side of the victim's forehead. However, this time, the pickaxe point slightly penetrates the skull. It gets stuck, and the killer wrestles to get it free. Once he does, as you would expect, he swings the pickaxe back and once again hits the victim on the left side of the forehead. However, this time, the pickaxe completely penetrates the skull and the metal blade clearly plunges deep into the man's brain. I have to say it, when the pickaxe makes connections with the victim's head, it causes the most sickening thudding sound. You hear a hitman laugh as the pickaxe is stuck in the man's head. The killer easily dislodges the pickaxe and then strikes the man in the same spot again, once again penetrating the skull. Probably due to nerves, the victim then raises his hands up to his chest. The killer then strikes the victim 2 more times on the left side of the forehead. On one occasion, he has to violently shake to get the pickaxe out, and after the last strike, this causes a huge river of blood to leak from the hole in the man's skull. It's hard to explain, but the way the victim is laying in the grave has made his arm rest close to his side, so essentially, this creates an area for the blood to pool in. Blood leaks from the huge hole in the man's skull at a rapid rate, so much so that you can actually hear it flowing like a tap that has been left on at low pressure. It's the sound of a constant stream. Even the hitmen seem surprised due to the sheer amount of blood, and they just stop and stare. They simply record what is happening and talk amongst themselves. It takes around 30 seconds for the constant sound of running blood to stop, and at this point, there is a huge pool of blood in the grave. The left side of a man's skull has been completely destroyed and hollowed out by the pickaxe. The video ends as the person filming zooms into the pool of blood, which contains bubbles. As for pickaxe videos, there have been several recorded by Brazilian gangs, but in terms of the pure visceral nature of this clip, this one may be the worst. In regards to what gang committed the murders, I'm not entirely sure, but I've seen some comments online insinuate that it's the work of Primeiro Comando de Capital. Number 4. Pulling teeth. The clip in question is one that I've been aware of for quite some time. However, I never intended to cover it due to a couple of reasons. Primarily, I found zero backstory behind the video, and the original version which I was sent contained zero sound. So despite as visceral as the clip is, I wasn't going to cover it. However, recently I was sent the same clip, this time with sound, and as many of you know, it's very often the sounds of such videos that make them incredibly hard to watch. When it comes to gore and shocking content, such videos affect us in different ways. Speaking from my own perspective, it's more so the emotional impact of the videos that affect me. Sympathy for the victims, which often results in a period of seeing the world through lenses coloured with a shade of hopelessness. However, this clip is a rare one that got to me purely based on its visceral nature and shock value. It also plays into a psychological fear that myself and many of us have, called dentophobia. Dentophobia, also known as odontophobia, is essentially the fear of dentists, doctors and needles, and also your teeth falling out. While I'm not scared of dentists, the thought of one day my teeth falling out is one that makes me shudder. So much so, I've often had dreams about this happening. Upon research, I actually found that this was a very common dream among many people. Dreams about teeth falling out often carry psychological and emotional meanings. For some, teeth are a symbol of youth, vitality and strength. When you dream of them falling out, it may reflect a subconscious fear of aging or an awareness of your own mortality. The fragility of teeth in dreams can mirror the natural decline of the body over time, highlighting anxieties about growing older or losing physical capabilities. I think for me, this may be the reason why these dreams occur to me on a somewhat regular basis. While I'm not scared of death, I am somewhat scared of getting old, as weird as that sounds. For others, since teeth are essential for speaking, losing them in a dream can symbolize difficulties with communication. You may feel that your voice is not being heard, or you could be struggling with how to express yourself in a particular relationship or situation. The visceral nature of the clip, the horrific sounds, combined with the fact that it also plays into a psychological fear of mine, made it incredibly hard to watch, and one that genuinely made me feel queasy. The clip itself is only 23 seconds in length, though that is more than long enough, and it's been filmed during nighttime in a forest or jungle type location. Listening to the voices in the video, it's hard to ascertain where the clip actually originates. The person who sent it to me seemed to think that it came from Africa, though I have no idea. The quality of the footage is also pretty poor, adding to the dreary, gruesome video in a weird way. As you play the clip, you are met with the sight of a victim who is pinned to the ground and he's laying on his back. A man who is holding a pair of yellow pliers in one hand uses his other hand to pin the victim's head to the ground while also simultaneously holding the victim's mouth open. Despite the poor quality, you already see that the victim has sustained damage. He's potentially taken a beating and his mouth looks mangled. He's already a bloody mess. You then see the man with the pliers actually use the tool on the victim. He takes the pliers and then grips onto one of the top middle teeth. It's worth noting that several of his teeth already appear to be missing. He grips onto the tooth and then tries to pull the tooth out using the pliers, though he fails on this attempt. There are no screams from the victim at this point. The torturer then grabs onto the same tooth again with the pliers. However, this time, he doesn't opt to pull the tooth. Instead, he tries to snap it out of its socket. He does this with ease. The noise of the tooth breaking is similar to that if somebody was cutting their nails, but obviously much louder. Instantly after the tooth has been snapped, the victim lets out the most agonizing screams. However, due to the fact he can't move his mouth, as the torturer is holding it open, the screams come from the bottom of a man's throat, giving them a horrific, guttural sound. The torturer then takes two more top teeth out in rapid succession. The sounds of the teeth cracking is horrible. The victim continues to agonize as this happens. You also see the victim's mouth slowly begin to fill with blood as he has his teeth removed. The last few seconds the cameraman zooms into the victim's face and mouth, and quite frankly, the victim is an absolute mess. His mouth has been completely destroyed. Some teeth have been completely removed, whereas others only partially, leaving dagger-like shards of what used to be full teeth. The man's gums have also been horrifically damaged. They almost look neon red. The clip ends there. In terms of torture clips, this is easily one of the hardest to watch, and quite frankly, it shocked even myself. I'm assuming that the torture may have been gang-related. Possibly, the victim was talking to police or giving information away to rivals, hence the type of torture which was carried out, though I could be wrong. I've scoured the net for information relating to this video, but I can't find anything. Due to obvious reasons, I can't show still images from this clip, but if anyone out there knows about this video and has any information, please let us know in the comments below. Number 5. PCC Affiliates Savage Demise. In Brazil, Primeiro Comando da Capital are the largest criminal gang in the country. In fact, according to a 2023 Economist report, the PCC is Latin America's biggest drug gang, with a membership of 40,000 lifetime members, plus at least 60,000 so-called contractors. Their home base is the state of Sao Paulo, however, they have a presence in numerous countries across Latin America and worldwide, including Colombia, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, Portugal, Guinea-Bissau, Nigeria, the Philippines, and even Lebanon. The gang are also considered to be among the most violent in Brazil, and over the years have become known for their brazen acts of violence in broad daylight, massacring anyone who goes against them. Currently, their two main rivals would be Comando Vermelho, the second biggest gang in Brazil, as well as Família do Norte. The battles against these gangs have produced incredibly graphic videos on all sides, in fact many of which rival the worst Mexican cartel videos that you will see. This one, in my opinion, is one that goes under the radar, as is common with gruesome videos released by Brazilian crime factions. However, that doesn't make it no less graphic or sadistic than the same types of videos released by drug cartels in Mexico. The clip itself is 1 minute and 29 seconds in length, and it depicts the murder of two females suspected of being tied to Primeiro Comando da Capital. I believe the clip came out in 2018, and from what little backstory there is, it seems that the most likely perpetrators were members of Família do Norte, though I have not found an official confirmation of this. The setting of the video is that of a jungle location, and it's filmed at night. Alongside the sounds of brutality and barbarism, you also hear the chirping of crickets and the creaking of tree branches, adding an eerie feeling to an already messed up situation. As you play the clip, you are met with the sight of two female captives who are laying on the ground, and they both seemingly have their hands tied together. The women look young. I'd estimate them to be late teens or very early 20s. Both women are alive at the beginning of the clip, though they are both extremely subdued. It seems clear that they have been drugged. They barely make any sounds throughout their horrific ordeals. Their eyes look vacant, their movements slow as they await their gruesome demise. After a second or two, a hitman then enters shot. He is shirtless and is using said shirt for a makeshift face covering to conceal his identity. He's also carrying what appears to be a kitchen knife. He approaches the two victims and picks the woman on the furthest right of the screen to be his first kill. He straddles the victim, basically sitting on her abdominal area. He then grabs her by the hair to hold her head still, and then he commits absolute savagery with the knife. He begins by stabbing the poor woman in the throat multiple times, way too many to count, and primarily he stabs in the middle of the throat, near the Adam's apple area. The blade plunges deep, and the audible thuds of the blade penetrating through the neck and hitting the spine are horrible. He then alternates to stabbing the woman in the side of the neck, in the area of the carotid artery. There's a lot of blood, but it isn't leaking with any pressure, presumably due to the drugs. After stabbing the neck a multitude of times, he then begins to stab the woman in the face, aiming for her eyes. When he misses the eyes, he stabs into the forehead and cheek areas, but the blade can't penetrate the bone. Instead, the blade almost bounces off, creating horrible sounds. Eventually, he manages to plunge the knife into the left eye, sinking deep, without doubt touching the brain. Then he does the same with the right eye. This time, the blade sinks so deep, when he tries to pull the blade out, it actually lifts the woman's head up. All throughout this, you hear a woman talking in the background. At first, I assumed it to be someone from behind the camera, but I actually think it's the other victim. The speech sounds disjointed, as if somebody were to talk when they're drunk. The killer, regardless, continues to then stab away at the first victim, this time once again focusing on the neck area, stabbing all over tens of times. He also stabs at the top of the chest area. At this point, you hear the faint laboured breathing from the victim. You hear her gargling on blood. Her eyes at this point also look extremely disturbing due to the prior stabbing. It's hard to explain, but it's truly horrific to look at. You basically just see the white of the eyes, like her eyes have rolled into the back of her head. After around 40 seconds, the second woman starts talking again. This then makes the killer focus on her. He mounts her, grabs her by the hair as she is talking, and he totally eviscerates her. He pulls her head to the side, exposing the side of her neck, and he stabs several times in the carotid artery area, instantly causing a lot of blood to flow. He shit-talks the victim as he stabs away like a maniacal demon. He then starts to stab her all over her neck, the front, the left, the right. As he's doing this, she starts moving her head. She's still fully conscious despite the drugs and the blood loss. He then tries to stab her in the eyes, but misses every time, stabbing her in the cheek instead. This causes her to move her head violently. The killer then resumes stabbing the neck. Basically, at this point, he stabbed her so many times that it begins to look like a partial decapitation. The way her head is laying enables you to see her eyes, and there is still movement. You see her eyeballs slowly moving around as she is continuously being stabbed in the neck. You then hear the sounds of gurgling blood, though it's much louder than the first victim. It's extremely chilling. The killer then backs off, and for the final 10 seconds, they leave the woman as the camera focuses on her. Her struggles for breath become even more violent, and the noises even louder. To give you an idea of the sound, it's similar to snoring mixed in with gurgling. The sounds are utterly horrific. The video ends as the woman is slowly bleeding out. But there we have it, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it, if you can enjoy this sort of content. If you're new here, if you could smash the like, hit subscribe, be much appreciated. Also, the links to my socials in the pinned comment, my Twitch for example, Twitter, etc. If you guys would drop me a follow, be much appreciated. But anyway, as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.